Hey everyone, welcome to Fiction Quest. Today, we're bringing you an incredible new movie on What If Naruto Become the World's Greatest Swordsman? Don't forget to subscribe and like this video before we begin. Let's get into the story. Naruto was in a bad spot. He had had just a few months before he started the academy at age of 6, but he had a major problem due to an accident. He could no longer send chakra out of his body. He had to find something to make him special, and sadly a new dream. Because to become the Hokage you have to know at least 100 jujitsu techniques. The first thing he thought to try was an all hand-to-hand approach, but some guy named Lee who had the same problem was already going for the same dream. Naruto would never steal someone's dream. Naruto sighed as he turned into a back alley. This was the quickest path home. All he needed to do was try to think of something to make him famous. He liked watching the buildings as he went by when he saw something new, a sword shop. That is when an idea hit Naruto. If I become the world's greatest swordsman, then I will be more respected than the Hokage. Naruto thought with glee and vigor as he walked into the shop. Behind the counter he saw a man. He was old and he wore a green bandana around his white hair. His left ear was pierced in 3 places with triangle-shaped earrings. Touken Rorinoa had just moved to Konoha. He was a skilled swordsman, but he was getting older, so he had decided to make swords instead. He had never accomplished his lifelong dream of becoming the world's greatest swordsman. He watched a small blonde boy enter his shop wearing a white t-shirt and black pants. The kid looks to be an orphan, and judging by the amount of dirt on him, there is no way he could ever afford a sword, so what does he want? The kid was carefully looking at each sword on the wall. Touken stood up and walked over to the boy. "Kid, why are you here?" he asked before he continued with his next statement of facts. "I know you do not have enough money for any of my blades." So caught up in his dream, Naruto had forgotten the fact that swords cost money, but he need a sword to become a swordsman. "I will do anything you want if you please help me complete my goal," Naruto practically demanded. He now had a dream, a purpose, something that made him. "Oh, and what is your goal? What will you need an old swordmaker like myself for?" Touken questioned, even though he knew the answer. "I want to be the world's greatest swordsman and have my own unique style." Naruto added the unique style part because he loved to be different and he would be even more respected. "So you want to have a unique style? Ha, 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 kid. There are so many styles, from one sword, two-handed sword, two sword, and finally giant sword styles, that you will probably only recreate one that is already known," Touken exclaimed. He knew he was being hard on the kid, but he could not let the kid make the same mistake he had. Naruto looked down at that, his new dream already dying. "Wait," he said, "1 and 2 were taken, but not 3. Then I will use 3 swords. My dream can't die. It's all I have left." Naruto yelled out defiantly. I can use the 3rd sword in my mouth," Naruto exclaimed as he now had the perfect plan. Touken looked at the boy's eyes. They were nothing but pits of determination and an undying will, something he never had, but most important was that he had nothing to lose. "Kid," he began in a much softer and kinder tone, "are you willing to give everything up for your dream, even your name?" Touken had gears turning in his head at that very moment. Naruto glared at Touken before replying. "I will give up everything for my dream." Naruto's confidence was rising as he assured himself that, "Even my name, my life, my soul for this dream." Those words were all but whispered, but they sounded like they came from a god. For Naruto, his dream is his life, is his soul, even a new dream. "Then give up your name because I am adopting you and will help you create your style. The Santoryu." "Yeah, has a nice ring to it," Touken stated as he looked at Naruto's shocked face. "Since I am adopting you, your new name is Zoro Rorinoa." As the old man spoke, Naruto felt something funny happening to his hair. He reached up and grabbed a hair strand, then plucked it off to take a look at it. The hair was a light moss green color. "Huh?" was all Naruto could say in confusion. "Oh, forgot, kid. My hair would be green too if I were not so old. The reason is that our family, or your new family, is cursed so that the males always have green hair," Touken explained as he pulled out 3 gold triangle earrings. "Now I will officially adopt you tomorrow as well as beginning your training, but tonight I give you the symbol of the Rorinoa." The man took them and put them next to the newly renamed Zoro. "This will hurt. Tell me when you are ready." Everything was happening so fast. Zoro, Naruto, had no idea how to wrap his mind around it, but it was for his dream. Do it. I swear that I would rather die than go back. Zoro stated with absolute resolve. Toucan nodded with a smile before he all too joyously piercing Zoro's earlobes. The resounding yell could be heard even from outside, but in a ninja village, no one really cared, because who was stupid enough to do anything in a ninja village, so it was probably training related. The next day Toucan adopted Naruto and had his name changed to Zoro Roronoa officially despite the old Hokage's plea to keep it the same. Toucan and Zoro were standing in the shop. Zoro was over in the corner as he watched the old swordsman dig through a trunk. Zoro would never call Toucan father till he called him son, so they ended up calling each other Baka and Gigi respectively. So what are you looking for, Gigi? Zoro asked Toucan with curiosity in his voice. Toucan looked at his son with an expression that clearly stated that he was annoying him. Brat. I am looking for 2 swords. Before saying that you're going to use 3, we need to train that mouth of yours, and I know how. Toucan said as he pulled out 2 katanas in black sheaths with matching hilts. Toucan then grabbed what looked like a wooden katana as well. Open your mouth, Baka. Toucan commanded, to which Zoro complied. Toucan then put the handle of the wooden sword in Zoro's mouth. That practice katana weighs twice that of a real blade. We will be using it to train your jaw. Toucan began as he drew another wooden katana. I am going to attack the same spot on the katana. All you have to do is train yourself to keep the blade from moving. Toucan exclaimed as he slammed his wooden katana against the one in Zoro's mouth. Zoro felt pain race through his jaw as the wooden katanas met. Is that all you got to fight for your dream? Zoro heard Toucan remark. That made Zoro angry as he gripped the katana in his mouth tighter. Zoro felt another shot of pain as Toucan slammed his katana against the one in Zoro's mouth again. Toucan then swung his arm back as he slammed his katana back onto the one in Zoro's mouth, this time shooting off the one in Zoro's mouth as the wooden blade flew to the ground. Zoro had blood coming from his mouth as he bent over and picked up the wooden blade. Zoro stuck it in his mouth before looking defiantly at Toucan. Do it again, Zoro commanded with his mouth still bleeding. Toucan looked down at Zoro with respect at the dedication. Not now, tomorrow. For now let's try and figure out where your footing would go, for this insane style idea, Baka. The last part Toucan said with a little joking fun. Zoro nodded his head as he grabbed 2 wooden practice katanas in each hand, the one in his mouth still there. Toucan was walking around moving and shifting. Zoro trying to find the type of stance that would work and be moderately comfortable. It took several days to figure out, along with the teeth training. Okay Baka. Today you are going to learn all about blocking. Now, I can show you some basics, then we will have to adjust them to your style, Toucan said as he walked around Zoro. You see, the advantage you have is a very aggressive style in the making, but if you learn to use all 3 swords defensively as well, you will be very hard to hit. If you learn to block from all sides, you will be very, very hard to hit, so, block. The last word was yelled out by Toucan as he swung his practice sword down. Zoro, taken by surprise by the attack, barely got his swords in a weak block attempt. It failed, badly, as Toucan's blade slammed into Zoro's skull, causing the young boy to fall down on his butt while trying to figure out what happened. Toucan smiled the beefiest of smiles before frowning and gave a swift, but light kick to Zoro's chest. Follow up after a block, Toucan commanded as he swung again. Zoro, still in a sitting position, quickly brought his swords up to meet the attack by crossing them, increasing their overall strength. He then used the leverage to take a swipe with the sword in his mouth. Toucan was taken by surprise as he felt the fake blade hit his side. Although it would not be a lethal wound, it would definitely be a crippling one. A few weeks later, and about 2 weeks before the academy. Hey Gigi, you were a swordsman, right? Zoro asked the Toucan as he looked up at him from a hard day's training. Toucan looked down at the boy he had taken under his wing. I once shared your dream, but I got too old to realize it. That is why I am so hard on you, so you don't feel the same heartbreak I did. Toucan explained as he stood up and walked over to the wall. On the wall was a white katana sheath with a matching handle sticking out. This is my blade. And these are yours. Toucan pulled out 2 black katana sheaths with matching handles sticking out. He handed them to Zoro. I know you use 3, so please complete our dream and become the world's greatest swordsman. Toucan exclaimed as he handed Naruto his old blade. Then Toucan coughed up blood. Dad. Zoro shouted, calling Toucan his father for the first time as he rushed to him. "Don't worry, I will get you to the hospital," Zoro said as he tried to pick up Toucan, only for Toucan to weakly remove Zoro's hand. "I'm sorry, Zoro, but my time is up. The doctors are surprised I've lived this long as it is. My sword's name is Wado Ichimonji. Please take this and your 2 blades. Become great, my son," Toucan said as he tied his bandana around Zoro's head and put Zoro's 3 swords in a green haramaki that went on Zoro's waist. "I sold the store and everything but your stuff. I had it moved to an apartment. I used the money to buy for you. Still, don't why you like that hammock." And with a weak laugh, Toucan died. For the first time since Naruto was 3, he cried. Naruto looked down at his father as a medic came in. The medic had nothing but sympathy for the young Zoro as he carefully lifted Toucan's body. "Hey kid, why don't you come with me, to give him his last respects?" the medic said as he saw the boy's swords. "Hey, don't you think those are a bit dangerous, kid?" only to receive a glare though tear-stained eyes. "They are his last gifts, to me," the strange boy said, and the medic felt really bad about saying that and a little jealous about the fact after all his father's last gift was an extreme amount debts. At the funeral the next day only 3 people were there. One was the medic, the other was the Sarutobi, and finally Zoro. Zoro watched his father's body being lowered into the ground without shedding a tear, for they were all spent. "Father, I swear on this day I will become the world's greatest swordsman, and that I will live my life without regrets, without hesitation. I swear I will complete my dream, our dream," Zoro told the casket as it came to rest in the ground. Zoro turned and started to walk away, and the heavens rained as though they wept for him. Only a few days had gone by since the funeral, and Sarutobi was worried about Zoro, because the boy only spent his days doing 3 things: training, sleeping and eating. Now normally there are some ninjas. Cough guy cough, that did the same thing, but Zoro did this day and night, only sleeping a few hours or minutes between the intervals he is either training or eating. Hell, Sarutobi saw Zoro sleep training once as the boy was going those sword techniques while sleeping. He also knew that Zoro was using weights to help increase his strength. Sarutobi noticed that Zoro also developed an obsession with his swords, especially the white one, and with technique. Sarutobi only hoped that the academy could help Zoro. Zoro sighed as he made his way through the academy looking for room 33, his homeroom. "What a waste of time, I could be training," Zoro thought as he entered the room. "Ah, you must be Zoro Roronoa," the scarred-faced Chunin said, to which Zoro simply nodded. "Now why don't you tell us about yourself?" Haruka stated it as an order rather than a question. Zoro nodded and turned to the class. "My name is Zoro Roronoa. I practice the art of Santoryu." As Zoro said the name of his sword style, all the kids were wondering, how does he use 3 swords? "My dream, my ambition is to become the world's greatest swordsman. This is my dream, and if you do something that gets in the way of my goal, I will cut your stomach open to say sorry." Zoro finished with a dark gleam in his eye noticed by Sasuke. Only his brother had such a gleam. However, the fangirls that followed Sasuke now had another dark crush on Zoro, evident by the hearts in their eyes. Shikamaru looked at the new enigma in their class, that is Zoro. They had been in the same class for about 2 years and he was still an enigma. Shikamaru loves riddles, and unfortunately that is what Zoro is, as the boy seemed to do nothing but eat, sleep, and train. There was also the fact that Zoro fell asleep in class as much as himself, yet all the girls just sighed and looked at him as if he was a gift to all females his age. Hell, he had more girls trying to get him than Sasuke. Of course Shikamaru knew that Sasuke was glad that they shifted to Zoro as he could have more peace. Shikamaru also found out that Zoro could not use chakra much like that Lee guy, but instead of calling him a loser like the girls did to Lee, they would go on and on about how Zoro was dealt such a rough hand in life and only their gentle touch could help it. The thing is that Zoro was extremely loyal to those that he felt are friends or that he owed. This was proven to Shikamaru when Ino gave Zoro a red apple, and later when Ino was being bullied it was Zoro that scared the bullies away with only a dark look and a few words. After that his fan club, stalker group doubled. All of these things he thought about, but the one thing no one saw yet was how he fought with 3 swords. Troublesome, he thought, muttered. Shikamaru looked over at Zoro in the nearly empty classroom as he, along with Zoro and Sasuke, were the earliest to arrive. Shikamaru stood up and walked over to Zoro, getting a raised eyebrow from Sasuke and being ignored by Zoro due to the fact that he was asleep. Shikamaru nudged Zoro's boot with his own in an attempt to wake the sleeping swordsman. Shikamaru watched as Zoro's eyes snapped open and looked around for a threat, only to see Shikamaru. "What do you need, Shikamaru?" Zoro questioned in a sleepy tone. "Why do you pursue your dreams so fanatically?" Shikamaru asked, neither of them noticing the group that snuck in to hear the conversation, mainly Zoro's fans, stalkers. "Not that it is bad, but I am confused by your actions," Shikamaru explained. Zoro sighed before speaking. "All right, Nara. I am in a good mood today, so I guess I can tell you as long as you never tell anyone else without my consent, got it?" Shikamaru nodded. "I was born an orphan, with nothing. My first dream died when I found out that I could not use jujitsu. I had nothing but the clothes on my back and a desire to be something special." Zoro spoke so intent on the story that he did not notice the girls enter the classroom. Of course, Shikamaru was just as ignorant as Zoro about the girls. "One day I was walking past a sword shop. That's when I realized my dream was to become the world's greatest swordsman." Zoro stopped as he collected his thoughts. "I forgot that swords cost money, so I said I would do anything if the old man in charge of the shop would help me." The man's name was Toucan. Zoro's normal face was replaced by one that spoke of sadness. Shikamaru noticed it, so did all the girls that knew this was their true love. "Toucan took me in and helped me learn how to use a sword, even helped me create my own style. He became my father," Zoro continued. Even Sasuke looked on interestedly. "One day, I asked him if he had a sword." Zoro unintentionally looked down at the white sword and the blade in its sheath. Shikamaru picked up on the hints and figured out that the white sword was his father's, but didn't swordsmen consider their sword their soul? "It was the night that he died he handed me his sword and this bandana, and told me, my sword's name is Wado Ichimonji. Please take this and your two blades. Become great, my son." As Zoro told his tale, Shikamaru could only now begin to understand what drove Zoro to become what he is now. The girls in the class were now openly crying for their wounded love Zoro. "At the funeral for my father, I shed no tears. Instead, I made a vow to become the world's greatest swordsman and to live my life without regret or hesitation." Zoro proclaimed the last part as he looked Shikamaru straight in the eyes. "I hope that answers your question, Nara, as I knew you would have tried to find out another way if I did not tell you." Zoro trailed off as Shikamaru realized that he was right. If Zoro said nothing, he would have gone off to try and figure it out on his own. "Forgive us, Zoro-kun. We never knew you had it so hard." The girls in the class shouted, making Zoro's eyes widen as he realized that they heard every single word, or in other words, he told his story to more than one person, people that he did not fully trust. Sasuke looked at the group as he felt that Zoro went up a notch in his book. They both had something to do before their loved ones could rest. Sasuke looked at Zoro's expression. Seeing that his stalkers cry, he knew that they would follow Zoro more than ever and maybe stay off my back. Sasuke thought with glee. Hinata looked in awe at Zoro's new light. Hinata at first disliked Zoro for his arrogant and perceived mean nature, and his cold disposition to others, but now she saw the real him, a hurt young man fighting for his dream and the memory of a deceased parent. Hinata would also admit to the fact that he looked pretty good. Ino looked at Zoro, her true love since he saved her from being bullied. Ino would admit that at first she was attracted to Zoro because of his mysterious nature, then she became attracted to his nonchalant attitude, then she finally became attracted to him because of who he was. Now she found he had a sad and jaded past, and that made him all the hotter. Iruka walked into the classroom after briefing Mizuki about their students as the man had been ill for a while. "Hello class. Here is my assistant Mizuki, please greet Mizuki." Most, if not all, the class greeted the teacher, except for a few, mainly Zoro, Sasuke, and Shikamaru, though their reasons were different. Zoro and Shikamaru were asleep and Sasuke would not speak unless spoken to. "Okay class. Today I have a unique lesson in Kenjutsu." As soon as Iruka said those words, Zoro's head shot up along with most of the class, sure that they would finally see how Zoro fought. "I brought a student from a higher class to help me demonstrate, but I need a volunteer." Zoro stood up faster than anyone could see him move, a feral grin already on his face. "Well, I guess that takes care of that," Iruka said. "Now everyone, we'll be heading outside in the training field for today." Zoro saw a girl about a year older than him with her brown hair in buns. Her clothes were chosen for their maneuverability and flexibility. In her left hand was gripped a single katana, though it looked like she preferred to fight with it in both hands. "Hi. My name is Tenten. It is nice to meet you. What style are you using?" the girl now identified as Tenten asked. "My name is Zoro and I use Santoryu style." Zoro spoke calmly as he drew his white sword and placed the handle in his mouth. Tenten could only stare. She could hardly believe that anyone could use 3 katanas effectively. She watched as he grasped the other 2 in his hands before taking a stance. "Okay." She frowned doubtfully. "It's your funeral if you want to follow an impossible style." Tenten rushed at him and went for a midsection strike that would be easily blocked as she did not want to hurt the kid. Zoro saw that the strike was half-hearted and he was mad. He rushed forward angling the sword in his mouth to meet hers, and as soon as they connected with a clang, Zoro twisted his head to force the blade to sail past him as he spun, bringing his other swords in an arc towards her back. "Never hold back against a fellow follower of the swords," Zoro shouted as he stopped the blades before they could hit her. Tenten looked down in shame after the first exchange. They both followed the path of the sword and they were both considered low ninja level, so had been insulting to hold back. "Sorry," she spoke sincerely, "but now that I know those 3 swords are not just a joke, let's get serious." Tenten spoke as Zoro let her retrieve her katana. She then entered a stance with both hands on the katana and looked at Zoro, her eyes hard but still kind. "Well, what are you wanting for?" Tenten taunted. Zoro let a friendly smirk grace his lips as he lifted the blades in his hands over his right side. "Oni!" Zoro began as he rushed at Tenten, crossing his blades. "Jiri!" he shouted as he uncrossed them at high speed, taking 3 separate slashes at Tenten. Tenten recognized this as a signature attack of this new style, as he actually said a name. Tenten quickly brought her own blade to block, but she was nowhere near fast enough to block them all and ended up with 2 small cuts across her belly. Tenten knew that he pulled back some, but that attack was meant to finish off the opponent and would normally cut though their guts. Tenten jumped back and unsealed another katana. This way she could at least keep up with the green-haired swordsman. When Zoro saw Tenten take out a second katana, he grinned. That meant that she could block his attacks easier and that it would take pure skill for either of them to get a hit. Zoro and Tenten charged at once and entered a dance of strikes and blocks. Tenten, however, noticed something in Zoro's movements. "Zoro, you said not to hold back, yet you are wearing weights," Tenten shouted at Zoro, making everyone's eyes to widen in disbelief. Zoro sighed as he knew he was found out. He carefully removed his weights. They made a solid thud when they hit the ground. Tenten raised her brow as she braced herself for the onslaught she knew would come. Zoro moved very fast, so fast that almost all the people of his age group had trouble keeping up as he darted in and out of Tenten's defense. Tenten knew that the only way to walk out of here with pride was to at least hit Zoro once. She watched him rushing closer and knew what she was about to do was stupid, but she had to get at least 1 hit. Tenten dashed forward at the same time she saw him move and positioned her blade to hit him, however she did not position it for any kind of block. Zoro's eyes widened in surprise as he quickly moved his blades so that they would not hit her deeply. Zoro passed Tenten, his blades only thinly cutting her side while he felt her blade cut his cheek. Tenten turned to look at Zoro. She had managed to get a shallow cut across his cheek. "I surrender," Tenten spoke as she sealed her blades. "You are very good and I am about at my limits, so if you don't mind I would like a rematch someday." Tenten spoke with clarity that stated that she would train till she could face him evenly. Zoro had a smile on his face as he looked her in the eye. "I look forward to our future matches." Zoro had a look on his face that had caused the girls in his group to glare at Tenten, thinking that she would steal their true love. The girls then began to think about how they could catch Zoro's attention. Hey, she only got his attention because she could fight with a weapon. Then the girls all together got an evil smile. "If he wants a weapon wielder, I will become a weapon wielder." Almost all the girls thought as they made plans to become good with a weapon. Maybe even cut Zoro's shirt a little. The girls blushed. Iruka looked at Zoro and Tenten before applauding for them. "Excellent work, guys. This will really show what Kenjutsu users can do." Iruka spoke proudly as he had the class return to the classroom. Iruka stood up in front of the class now sitting in desks. "Okay, that little demonstration is for the fact that we are going to move on to weapons training, mainly kunai and ninja stars." Zoro's face was a little bit bitter, but he would have preferred, well, melee weapons so that he could use his swords in training. A while later though, the class and the students were growing with each passing day in skill and maturity. Zoro-sama, we love you. Okay. Maybe not maturity. Zoro thought as he watched his fangirls run towards him. However, the fangirls were now somewhat deadly as they brought a wide variety of weapons and practiced with them in hopes of impressing their true love. Zoro looked around a bit at the assortment of weapons. He did notice a few sword users, but they were overall still weak, for now. Zoro could not wait till they actually get competent enough to face him. It is nice not having to face jujitsu users. Zoro personally thought that most jujitsu users went about it the wrong way. They should use more stealth-type techniques than those flashy styles that draw attention to you, Zoro thought. Iruka looked at his students as he smiled. He had had them for a few years and they were going to be great. Okay class, we are going to start on the history of Konoha. Iruka then began to teach the class the most boring part of the academy curriculum. Zoro found himself sleeping even more in class as they started the history portion. In fact, that was what he was doing right now. Zoro felt a touch, awakening him from his sleep. Zoro-kun, we would like to fight you. In a spar, any techniques allowed. Zoro looked over to see Ino and 3 other girls there. Okay. Zoro simply stated as he noticed that the class had ended. Zoro stood up and followed them out to a training yard. Why don't you make the first move? Zoro simply suggested. He saw Ino flash though some unfamiliar hand signs, and her body fell to the ground. Why? Was all Zoro could get out before everything went black. Zoro appeared to be floating in a sea of blackness when he heard a voice. Can't meet me yet, kid, wake up. Zoro's eyes fluttered open. As he sat up, he was in the same training ground but it was later in the day. Zoro felt something funny on his face and chest. He looked down and to his horror he was shirtless. He shot his hand to his face and he found a red smear on it. He sniffed his finger which had some on the tip from the contact. It was lipstick. Why, what happened? Zoro spoke out in shock as he wiped off his face and went home. Ino was really happy. She used her family justice to take over Zoro-kun's body and have him remove his shirt. She also liked that he was still out of it when they gave him a kiss on his face. Ino squealed in joy. He was a good kisser unconscious. She could not wait for him to kiss her when he was awake. Zoro sighed as Iruka went into another lecture. He was just glad that he had only 1 year to go before he left the academy. Zoro curled his lip at the thought and looked around the room. Nearly everyone had a non-ninja weapon, or more politely, shuriken and kunai. Don't get him wrong, nearly everyone had them too, but a lot had taken unusual weapons as well. Zoro did not see what the problem was, but some of the older gen were against the new weapon surge, idiots. Having exhausted the sights in the room, Zoro looked out the window, but instead of seeing what he expected, he saw monks. Peering closer, Zoro saw that they were wearing orange robes and appeared to be training, using both swords and bow staffs. Hey Iruka! Zoro called out. The only reason that he did not use the term sensei was that there was only one man he respected enough to call that, and he was long gone. Iruka looked at Zoro, then he followed Zoro's gaze out the window to see the monks. They're the monks of fire here on a visit. If you guys wish, I can ask if we could have a weapons-only spar with them. Iruka asked, but he knew the answer. After Zoro's fangirls took up weapons, it started a chain reaction in Konoha. It was predicted that Konoha would become more like Mist in terms of diversity in weapons and styles in few years. Zoro's only indication that he wanted to go was the fact that he stood up and started to walk towards the door. Ino, seeing her true love heading to the door, quickly followed him, along with the rest of the class. Zoro paused outside and took the time to notice some of the other students' weapons. Ino, despite what she had tried before, now sported a pair of knife boats. The knife boat was a strange weapon even by ninja standards. It had a blade mounted on the side and when used in a swiping kick, it extended past the bottom of the boat to cut into the opponent. The weapon required very strong legs and near-perfect footwork. Zoro still did not know where she had put his old shirt, he just knew that it was her that had taken it. Sasuke, for all his faults, had become a decent Anbu sword user, although Zoro still trounced him in every fight. Choji had taken up a war hammer that was very large and seemed to be made completely out of metal. The head of the hammer was shaped like 2 triangles intercepting each other, giving the hammer a V shape on the top and bottom of the head. Zoro shifted his thoughts away from his classmates as he looked at Iruka, who was talking to an older monk with a shaven head. They seemed to be pleased with how the conversation was going, so that meant that he would have a new sparring partner soon. Watching closely, Zoro saw that the conversation was coming to the end and stepped forward as Iruka made his way to his class. Similarly, the monk returned to his compatriots. "Okay guys, here is the thing. You will be paired against one of their monks. You will only be allowed your weapons and hand-to-hand skills for this. However, the head monk also wants us to attempt to use dirty tricks to prepare his students to face ninjas." The class knew that monks sometimes had to defend themselves against ninjas from other nations. Soon they were paired off. Zoro was paired with a monk his age named Lee. Lee's weapons of choice were twin hook swords. Zoro was excited at the prospect of facing such unique swords. Lee bowed his head to Zoro, who had risked a quick look to the two observers. He was asking without words if he could do what a ninja would do if the opponent bowed before a match. Iruka nodded. Zoro wasted no time drawing his swords before running straight at his bowed opponent and delivered a savage kick to the head before dancing away. Lee looked at Zoro with shock. "Rule number 1 when fighting a ninja, we do not fight fair," Zoro said calmly through the sword in his mouth. Zoro then charged again, swinging the swords in his hands in a downward arc. Lee's mouth firmed, and seeing the attack moved his twin swords to block. He was also looking for a way to disarm or get under this strange new style he was fighting against. Lee watched as the ninja in training named Zoro attacked without pause as he was forced to block those lightning-fast strikes. Lee started to notice a pattern in the style. Zoro's right arm would drop a little bit when he struck with the blade in his mouth. It was not much, but he would take it. Zoro decided that he should end the fight now as he rushed in to try and position the blade in his mouth with Lee's neck. In his confidence, Zoro did not notice the excitement in Lee's eyes or he would have halted his attack. Lee used the slight opening to hook Zoro's right blade and flip it away. Zoro watched wide-eyed as his blade sailed through the air and time seemed to slow down as it impaled the dirt. This marked the first time since the passing of his sensei that he was disarmed. The Leaf Nin trainees were stunned as no one had ever been able to disarm Zoro in any fight. Even their instructors were never able to disarm him, so that begged the question, just how strong were these monks? Some or most of the trainees began to wonder what their chances could be if Zoro was disarmed, even though he still had two swords. Zoro stared at his sword in the ground for a fraction before removing the blade from his mouth and grasping it in his empty hand. Zoro felt a kind of hatred towards the man that had dared to disarm him. How dare he do that? Zoro thought as he frowned darkly. How dare he spit in the face of all my work? Zoro subconsciously knew that although these thoughts came from him, they were not his normal thoughts. Lee gasped as he saw Zoro's eyes flash red before Zoro once again pressed the attack. Lee was too stunned by the evil aura that Zoro now gave off to even move to block as two crossing cuts hit his chest and Zoro appeared behind him. The monk fell forward and hit the ground unconscious. Everyone watched speechlessly as the dramatic fight came to an end. Zoro's class was stunned as they had never seen him move that fast. 1 second he was there and the next the monk had a X cut into his chest while Zoro was behind him with his swords uncrossed. The monks were surprised that their best sword user had been taken down by an attack that was based on speed and power alone, not to mention that it was incomplete as Zoro was missing a sword. Zoro looked back at the opponent that he should by all rights feel great about beating, but he didn't. The victory that should taste sweet just left a sour taste in his mouth. Zoro sighed, frowning, then walked over to his fallen sword and sheathed it along with the swords in his hands. He paused a moment, then walked by his classmates, ignoring them as they congratulated him on a victory. Zoro ignored their cheers as he put his back against a nearby tree, closed his eyes, and folded his arms. With a frown still on his face, Zoro let sleep take him. Ino watched Zoro sleep and knew that this was not a time to touch him as he only let sleep take him standing up when he was thinking about something. She looked around and could see the other matchups taking place. Ino had fun watching her classmates go toe-to-toe against the monks and finding that the one Zoro fought was the most skilled. She also knew that Zoro was a heavy sleeper after spars, so he should still be there when Iruka dismissed the class after the sparring. Zoro felt time pass and realized he felt cold for some reason. He opened his eyes and found himself shirtless, his arms still folded across his chest. Zoro reached up and touched one of his cheeks and pulled his arm back as on his fingertips were smudged with lipstick. Zoro sighed as he pushed himself upright and walked home. Meanwhile, somewhere off the coast, a beautiful orange-haired girl was floating in a boat. She was laid out neatly with her eyes nearly closed. Her body looked limp and lifeless. She was wearing a blue and white shirt and a light brown miniskirt, demurely folded around her thighs. She looked like a well-developed 14-year-old. The weathered boat she was on was pretty simple as it had only a chest and a wooden staff in it. She floated peacefully until a small ship holding 3 burly thugs loaded with gold approached the small boat. "Hey guys! Look at that cute babe in the boat, hee hee hee." One of the thugs points out the orange-haired beauty as they pulled close. A wrinkle appeared on her brow, then the girl opened her eyes and looked at them. "Thank God you've come. I've been out here for days without food or water. Please, for some food and water you could help yourself to my treasure." The girl weakly pointed at the chest. "Yeah, we'll take it all right," the big bald thug said as he tried to look down her shirt. One of the other thugs heaved the chest that was on the girl's ship into their own, while all 3 jumped into the small boat. The girl's eyes seemed to take on a mischievous light when, all of a sudden, she aimed a vicious kick to one of the thugs' lower regions. She then flipped up her staff into the air as she jumped on the now crouching thug and then caught it before sending it straight into the faces of the other thugs. After the 2 thugs were knocked out by her staff, she then stomped on the head of the thug under her feet, knocking him out. Sometime later, the thugs opened their eyes, only to see their boat floating away. They grabbed for paddles, only to realize that there were none. The girl grinned at the thugs as she and all the treasure floated away from them. "Thanks for the treasure, suckers," the girl yelled out at them as she stuck her tongue out. The thugs looked at each other wide-eyed before speaking in unison. "Gatu will kill us," they shouted while grabbing each other. Iruka looked over his class of 13-year-olds as he mentally rehearsed what he was going to say. "Class, as you know, graduation is coming closer. However, the Hokage has need of some of you to take part in a mission." Iruka knew that the only reason his class had been chosen was due to the diverse weapons in his class, and the only reason Iruka's gen and above were not chosen was because they preferred standard ninja weaponry. "When I call your name, you are to make your way to wave by the means I call." Iruka continued in a slightly quieter voice as he now knew he had the entire class's attention. "Roronoa Zoro, you will be going by rowboat. Your role is to act as a pirate hunter. Don't worry, we have been spreading rumors to up your rep." Zoro nodded in agreement as a rowboat would help work out his arms. "Shikamaru and Choji will take the road disguised as civilians." Choji and Shikamaru nodded to one another. "Ino, you are going there disguised as an archaeologist named Nico Robin. We will have to dye your hair." Ino was a little dejected over the fact that she would need to dye her hair as she thought dye was damaging, but she perked up at the thought of some real action. "Okay. The names I have called you will be escorted to where you are to begin your roles." Iruka could only hope that everything would go smoothly. Zoro looked around as he was being led by 4 other ninjas to his rowboat. The path that they had taken took them right through the thick trees that covered the land of fire. That was another thing that Zoro did not understand, naming a place full of trees after fire. It was inviting trouble if you asked him. Zoro saw that they were approaching the small canal that led through the land of fire and went off into wave. He saw the rowboat and there was nothing remarkable about it, although it looked like it could fit 3 people. Zoro watched the other nins disappear after he was dropped off and frowned slightly. Zoro shrugged his shoulders as he climbed into the boat and grabbed both paddles. The wood was rough and poorly made, but he knew that it was a facade as they were hollow and had an anbu blade in each of them. Zoro started to paddle his way towards the land of wave, watching as the waters swirled around each paddle stroke. Zoro knew that each time he paddled, his strength would increase little by little. Zoro had been paddling non-stop for several hours, and it showed. His shirt had long since been abandoned and his body was covered in sweat. Nearing the shore, Zoro pushed his boat against the land and tied it down carefully. He stretched and rolled his shoulders while considering his surroundings. Zoro saw a good tree and walked over to it. He did not pack supplies as he considered this to be training, to live without aid. That was true training. Zoro closed his eyes as he rested his back against the tree. Tomorrow he had another day of hard rowing. Zoro was jerked awake when he felt something enter his clearing. He quickly turned his head in the direction from which he knew the thing had approached. It was a huge brown bear, lumbering into the clearing, his head weaving from side to side. Zoro locked eyes with the great beast. Zoro and the bear stared each other down, each trying to intimidate their opposition. Finally, the great bear turned his massive head away from Zoro, not wanting conflict with the strange human. Zoro watched the bear head towards the water to get a drink. It seemed that the danger had passed. Zoro quickly surveyed the rest of the clearing, then turned his attention back to the bear. He carefully studied the bear as it had its drink and left, leaving the swordsman alone in the clearing once more. Zoro looked up and saw that he was lucky enough to have chosen a fruit tree to nap under. He half smiled as he heard his stomach roar. He was more hungry than he had originally thought. Zoro looked for the closest branch to leap up and grab a fruit when he heard the rapid patter of small feet coming closer. Peering closer, he heard a thunderous roar from a bear, perhaps the same one from before. Zoro watched as a little kid came running out of the bushes, screaming his head off as the bear he saw earlier was chasing him. Zoro could not tell if it was a boy or girl, but he had to stop the bear. "Hey, kid, over here!" Zoro shouted as he put his father's sword into his mouth. The kid saw Zoro and instantly ran behind the swordsman as the man drew his other swords. The bear saw the strange swordsman blocking it from its lunch. This time the bear roared a challenge to the swordsman, hoping to scare off the man in front of him. That only caused the swordsman's eyes to flash red, telling the bear that if they fought it would be a fight to the death, no in-betweens. The bear paused briefly, then stood on its hind legs and roared loudly before charging the swordsman. Zoro braced himself and moved his two swords to the opposite shoulder. Zoro's teeth bit down harder on the sword in his mouth before he too charged at the bear. The bear swung its massive claw at Zoro's chest, hoping to disembowel his opponent before any harm could be done. Zoro spun, unleashing his blades and cutting diagonally across the bear's offending paw. The massive limb fell uselessly to the side of the bear, who was now roaring in agony at its bleeding stump of an arm. But Zoro was not done yet, and he quickly leapt into the air, spinning as he did, trying to sever the bear's head as well. The bear's instincts saved it as it drew its massive maw back and avoided the fatal blow. Zoro landed, but his back was to the bear and it took advantage by lunging at Zoro's right shoulder. Zoro let out a yell of pain as the bear's teeth bit down, breaking the bones in his shoulder. Zoro did not let the pain distract him from the fight as he flipped the sword in his left hand to a reverse grip and stabbed with all his might into the bear's broad chest. Zoro's strike hit home and the bear loosened his grip on Zoro's shoulder to let out a bellowing call of pain, giving Zoro the opening he needed. Zoro spun with speed that no one his age should have as he used the sword in his mouth to cut off the bear's lower jaw and sever the connection between the bear's skull and spine. The young child watched as the man who had saved the child's life fell to one knee, seeing that her savior was in danger, and with the bear lying dead to one side. The young child ran over to Zoro's side. "Don't worry, I will get help," the child yelled as he ran off towards her home in the forest. Zoro grimaced as darkness fell all around him, but then he felt pain again and somehow found himself on a ship's deck in the middle of the ocean. Zoro looked around but could only see a large white screen on the mast. Zoro watched as the screen showed an older version of himself standing next to several shadowed figures. Zoro heard a thunderous voice. "A glimpse of one's future is here, but you must leave now." Zoro frowned as everything went back to black. "Hey, he is waking up!" Zoro heard a child yell. He recognized the voice as the one he had saved from the bear. Gingerly, Zoro sat up and opened his eyes to see the child and his father standing there. "So kid, what's the name of my son's savior?" the man asked. The man had a brown beard and a round belly. He was wearing fisherman's clothes. "Roronoa, Zoro," Zoro said, not noticing the look of fear that flashed across the pair's faces. "Excuse me, Mr. Zoro," the father said as he led his son out of the room. "What are you thinking brining the devil Roronoa Zoro into a pirate's home?" the man yelled at his son. "Dad, I do not know who he was," the child exclaimed. "Okay, don't panic. Just hide all of my pirate stuff," the man said, hoping that in his weakened state Zoro would not figure it out. Zoro watched as the boy's father came back in and for some reason looked a little tired. Must be the fact that his son was attacked by a bear. Zoro decided silently. The man, whom Zoro still did not have a name placed yet, walked over to a counter in the kitchen. "Do you want anything to drink, Mr. Zoro, sir?" the father asked nervously as Zoro stared at him intensely. The man started to fidget from the unrelenting eyes. "Water will be fine," Zoro said after some time trying to figure the man out. The man turned, ready to go to the kitchen to get water as fast as possible, but Zoro's voice stopped him dead. "So, what is your name?" "What do I do now?" the man thought as sweat gathered on his brow. His hands started to shake as he realized that Zoro might recognize him. "Well, my name is Jack," the man said as he thought that he would be safe so long as Zoro did not ask for a last name. "Nice to meet you, Jack. How long before I can be travel ready?" Zoro asked as he was on a mission and he would really need to get going. "About a day, then you should be ready to head out again," Jack told Zoro a little calmer as he now knew Zoro was not after him. Jack went into the kitchen and grabbed a glass, then filled it with semi-cold water. Jack went back and gave Zoro the glass. Zoro muttered a quick thanks. A hard pounding on the door alerted everyone in the house. "Please don't be my stupid pirate friends," Jack thought as he gave Zoro the "I will be back soon" hand sign. Jack ran to the door, shot out of it like a bat out of hell, and grabbed his 3 friends, taking them a little farther away from the house so he could talk to them. One was a middle-aged man with a red and white shirt stretching to cover a prodigious beer belly. A bandana adorned with a small white skull completed his look. The second was a tall lanky fellow who wore nothing but brown pants. The third man perfectly fit the muscle for hire look with what appeared to be an ancient, filth-encrusted wife beater and nondescript shorts. "Okay guys, you know the new pirate hunter that is around that uses 3 swords, the 3 men nodded as they had heard of the pirate hunter that most called the devil incarnate. "Well, he saved my son from a bear and is currently in the house." Jack did not get any farther as he watched his 3 friends faint with horrified expressions etched on their faces. Ino looked out the ship's window as she had been practicing her act before she would reach Wave. She was actually a little bit concerned over what she needed to do as she just hoped that she could pull off a change as big as this one. She had already dyed her beautiful blonde hair, she still wanted to kill the person that made her do it. She sighed and remembered the other people that were going to be in the mission and wondered how they're doing. Shikamaru sighed as he and Choji trudged down an old dirt road though a very old forest. Now normally, this would be a good thing, but their ninja supplier had forgotten to add more food because of Choji's clan, so they ran out of food on the 3rd day of travel. Luck was not on their side as they were supposed to be CIVS, which meant that they had to walk there. "Hey Shikamaru, I am hungry," Choji said for the 5th time that day. "Look Choji," Shikamaru answered wearily, "we are both hungry, however there is probably a fruit tree around as this forest seems to be very old." Shikamaru reasoned as he looked around and he was right as he saw a low-hanging fruit. Strange, he thought. It was brightly colored and seemed to be the only fruit there. "Choji," he cautioned, "it might not be a good idea, troublesome." Shikamaru started, but stopped as he saw Choji wolfing down the fruit. "Man Shikamaru, that was the worst fruit that I ever tasted," Choji complained as he ran his hand over his face and to Shikamaru's amazement, Choji's face stretched like rubber. "Choji, I think that the fruit has increased your bloodline power," Shikamaru said as Choji suddenly realized that he had stretched his face to ridiculous lengths, and fainted. "Troublesome," Shikamaru said as he walked over to Choji's prone body and sat down next to him, looking up at the sky and watching the clouds. "Troublesome indeed," Shikamaru mused aloud. Zoro looked at the newcomers with interest as he drummed the handle of his father's sword with his fingertips. Each time they met the handle, the men became more nervous. So, Zoro began only for them to jump back and huddle. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Zoro demanded as he found the strange behavior, well strange. The fat one spoke first. Nothing Mr. Zoro, sir," as he looked for support from his 2 friends. The tall skinny one continued. "Why would there be something wrong, huh?" he asked as he let out a nervous chuckle and turned to the last member to continue, but he was too scared to say anything. "I don't have time for this. I am heading off to bed," Zoro declared as he stood up making the men back away as he walked by them to his temporary room. Zoro knew that he was going to have an interesting time tomorrow as he would reach Wave and start his mission. "Sorry about the length, but my computer had a virus so I had to make something to put out that would show that I am still alive. Also I need some ideas on what will happen in Wave." Zoro walked to the guest room that he was allowed to stay in and noticed. The room was pretty standard except there was no bed, but the hammock there would do just fine. Crawling into the hammock and carefully removing his swords to where they lay on his stomach, he drifted off into sleep. After all, tomorrow was when he would start his mission. The fat pirate got this strange look on his face as he looked at the other pirates. "Hey, why are we afraid of an injured man?" he asked as an evil grin led across his face. "You know what we should do. We should kill Roronoa." The other two seemed to agree, however Jack was against it. "Look, the man saved my son. You can't just kill him. Also, he moving out tomorrow," Jack said, his tone grave. The thuggish-looking pirate, however, did not look like he was going to be persuaded. "Jack, killing him will make sure we're famous. I say we do it." The tall and fat one seemed to agree. "I won't let you in there," Jack said as his voice had gone grave, as he was a man of honor and would fight for what he believed in. "Take one step towards that door and I will stop you myself." Jack grabbed a cutlass that he had hidden behind some furniture in case the authorities ever found this place. The three other pirates resounded by drawing their own blades. Jack moved into a defensive position as he knew that they were better than him and had numbers on their side. The tall one was the fastest and rushed forward with an overhead strike which Jack quickly blocked. Zoro's eyes opened when he heard the sound of metal hitting metal. Slipping out of his hammock and drawing his blades, he made his way towards where the sounds were coming from. Quickest way out, kick down the door. Jack knew he was in a bind as they had already gotten the drop on him and he knew he can't keep blocking forever. Jack blocked a strike from the muscular one when a loud bang sounded throughout the house. The fighting stopped as Roronoa Zoro the devil burst through the door with his swords drawn. The three idiot pirates all attacked Zoro at once with a downward stroke, which Zoro then blocked them at the same time. Zoro spun while locking their blades and sent them embedded into the ceiling. "Hey Jack, search them for weapons. I am getting to wave tonight," Zoro finished with an evil smile on his face. A few monuments later, Zoro sat cross-legged in the back of his small boat with the three pirates in front paddling with all of their might. "Remember that a true swordsman can strike while he sleeps," Zoro reminded Threaten as he closed his eyes, well aware that they would not dare try anything. Zoro opened his eyes a little while later and saw that one of the idiots decided to try and sneak up on him. It's the fat one. Well, there are only two oars, so I real don't need him," Zoro thought to himself quickly before kicking the fat man in the gut and putting him in a headlock while launching him off the rowboat. "Now if you want to be thrown out too, try and get me, if not paddle like your life depended on it." Zoro made the mock threat to scare the other two to paddle faster to wave. Zoro closed his eyes and let the idiots take care of things while he would dream up new sword attacks. Zoro looked around and noticed that the river was widening, meaning he was approaching the ocean. He might as well take over as the two idiots looked like they were going to collapse. "You two can get out of the boat now," Zoro spoke in a bored drawl. The two tired pirates jumped ship imminently to get away from the infamous bounty hunter. Zoro sighed as he grabbed the oars and started to row, and he would defiantly make it in a short amount of time. "I wonder how the others are doing," Zoro contemplated as he started to row the boat again. "Choji, you idiot," Shikamaru shouted as he lightly kicked Choji's head. "Not only did you change our backstory, you also launched a pirate age, all for meat." "But Shikamaru, the meat was so good. Also, how was I supposed to know that they would think the lie I told about someone named Gold D. Roger was real?" Choji tried to explain his mistake. "Just be glad I sent the leaf our new backstory. We should hear about them soon," Shikamaru said. However, he failed to mention that the One Piece treasure is fake, so when it gets to the council they would think that it is real, mainly because most of the council are stupid and the other half have never really picked up any pirate affairs. Choji, they have not seen me yet, so I can still change my looks while you have to get skinny quickly," Shikamaru said as he knew that they would have to look vastly different than their current ones. "We must acquire the treasure One Piece," the civilian head merchant of Konoha shouted in the council meeting. Images of pirate gold and rare jewels floating in his head. A old man covered in bandages stands up as well. "I concern the treasure must be Konoha's treasure." The image dancing around his head was off an ultimate weapon that could conquer all other nations. "We can't officially send ninjas out looking for it, however we already have a group in the field." The Sarutobi spoke loud enough for the others to hear. The ones on wave, they could pose as a pirate group, after all it is a pirate treasure. The Sarutobi paused as he looked at each of the two councils. "I personally believe that Zoro should be second mate. he is not suited to be captured as his obsession with his dream would get in the way. The council nods in agreement as the reports show that he is borderline psychotic when it comes to his dream. Shikamaru would also make a poor choice as caption he his way to lazy, and also I want him to learn cooking as well as the ability to treat women. Also I asked Guy to come up with a fighting style that uses only a person's legs for more cover, troublesome. Shikaku said about his son is truly the boy needed to learn a few things. I think my son Choji would make a good chose with the fruit he has eaten. He could make himself skinny and claim all his abilities come from the fruit. Also as caption he will gain confidence in himself that stops him from becoming great. I also sent him a straw hat and told him that it is an important heirloom to show the trust I have in him. Choza added as he saw this as a chance to have his son gain more confidence and help him deal with future tasks. I think Maino should join the crew later and let her look up and down different leads first before meeting up with them. Inoichi spoke up though he in actuality wanted his daughter to be away from a group of hormonal teens. He did know that Zoro would not be too interested as he was rather obsessed with his dream. So it is settled, and as a side mission give intel about the outside world. Of course this would have to be hidden from any non-leaf ninja that ends up in the crew. Sarutobi spoke with such authority that they all agreed adamantly. Well, this brings this meeting to a close. I will send Choji and Shikamaru's new personas today with my monkey summons. Other nations also heard about this treasure and quickly made mock pirate crews or hired real crews to look for the treasure. After all, whom know what this treasure is, and they all wanted it. Zoro grimiest as he saw the state that Wave was in, utter poverty. Everywhere he looked was ruined down or patched together with whatever was on hand, and seeing how everyone was cursing Gato under their breath, he had a pretty good idea of who was behind all this. Zoro looked down as his stomach growled. He quickly looked around for a restraint. He saw a place that was not into bad of shape, most likely because Gato and his men need someplace to eat every now and again. Zoro eyed the restraint a little longer before he made his way inside. The place had a homey feel. Most of the stuff there was wood and pretty clean. The bar also had several stools with red cushions. The other people in there, however, is a different story altogether. He spotted a lot of thugs in the right side. A girl with orangish hair half hidden in shadows, the barwoman, and a small kid that looked like he was an orphan with a very large hat. Walking up the counter and sitting in one of the stools. Hi, I would like the standard lunch. As Zoro waited for his meal, he noticed that the kid was eyeing him, probably because he was a newcomer. Zoro also noticed that the thugs were getting a little too rowdy. If they get too rowdy, I guess I could use the workout. Zoro thoughts trolled off as he saw his food set in front of him. Zoro also noticed that the kid's eyes wandered to the food. Zoro really did try to ignore the kid, but in the end it was useless. Hey kid, want some? The orphan looked up in shock as this was the first time someone offered him food. He quickly ran up and got on the stool next to this stranger, and as soon as he was up, the strange hands him a rice ball. Mister, why are you helping me? The kid's posture shifted, showing that he would be ready to bolt if needed. Well, reason number one is that I am an orphan like you. Zoro paused to examine the kid's shocked look. Actually looking at the kid's face, Zoro could see it was sharp with large brown expressive eyes, a small nose. Of course it seemed shock was evident across the kid's face. Also, you have the look of somebody that has no friends or family to look after them, and somebody that does not have a dream. Zoro looked over to see the kid's head down with his black bangs covering his face and eyes. So, what's your name? It's Morio. The now named Morio spoke up quietly while returning to look Zoro in his eyes. Protector. Good name. Zoro nodded in approval of the name, which seemed to brighten Morio up a little. Zoro looked over at Morio and noticed the kid went back to his downcast look, meaning he thought of something just now. Hey Morio, what's wrong? Also out the corner of Zoro's eye he noticed that Gato's men have left. You would not want to be my friend. My own parents did not want me. I have a bloodline. Morio spoke quietly, but he looked ready to bolt and he was tense. Zoro noted that the kid's eyes were watering up. Zoro then remembered that Wave is pretty close to missed. Poor kid has to have been abandoned, Zoro thought to himself before gently placing a hand on the kid's shoulder. Kid, I don't care if you have a bloodline. Morio looked up at Zoro, tears freely flowing as he leapt from his stool and hugged Zoro tightly. Morio looked up at Zoro's face and reimbursed something important. Mister, what is your name and dream? Morio reimbursed how Zoro mentioned something about a dream. Roar no a Zoro, and my dream is to become the world's best swordsman. Zoro answer simple and quick, however his name caused nearly everyone besides Morio to look at him in shock. The orange-haired girl looked at him in interest, a infamous pirate hunter here in Wave. Maybe he is after one of Gato's mercenaries or after Gato himself, either way he could be useful. She thought to herself, she knew now was not the time to make her move. Tsunami could not believe her luck. Here she was working as a barmaid to earn money to support her family, and now she has a chance to talk to a strong pirate hunter who may be able to help them with Gato. Excuse me, you two? Tsunami asked very politely with a pause to make sure that she had both of their attentions. But, do you two have any place to stay? The end. Now we will see you in the next video.